Professor Margaret Whitehead states that physical literacy is the motivation, confidence, physical competence, understanding and knowledge to maintain physical activity at an individual appropriate level throughout life. It is stated that from 1961 to 2005 there was a total decline in physical activity by 20% in the UK, and that by 2030 it is projected that that number will increase to 35%. It is recommended that children aged 5 to 15 should be at least moderately active for at least 60 minutes every day. It is also recommended that vigorous intensity activities, including muscle and bone strengthening activities, should be undertaken at least 3 days each week by children aged 5 to 15. In both boys and girls in England, the proportion of children aged 5 to 15 years meeting recommendations fell between 2008 and 2012. The largest declines were at age 13 to 15 years for both genders. The highest levels of physical inactivity in England are in the northwest for both men and women, men being at 26% and women being at 31%. More than a quarter of children in Wales aged 4 to 5 are considered overweight, and more than 1 in 10 are classed as obese. In 2014 it was found that 58% of adults in Wales were classified as overweight or obese, and 22% of that were obese. In children, 35% were considered overweight or obese, with 19% of that being obese. A BMI of over 25 is considered overweight and unhealthy. Across Wales, 26% of children have a BMI of over 25, whereas in England it is just 22%. The average figures for Wales are also higher than the worst region of England, which is the North East, where 24% of 4 and 5-year-olds have slipped into the overweight BMI zone. How can this affect the future generation? Well, inactive children are likely to become inactive adults. Later in life, physical inactivity increases periods of ill health and morbidity. Perhaps the most dangerous of all, physically inactive parents pass along the same patterns to their children. Physically inactive children have a higher obesity risk. In fact, they are twice as likely to become obese adults. Physically inactive children tend to miss more days at school, and as a result of this, they achieve a lower grade at school, which will affect how much money they earn later in life. Whilst at work, they tend to take more sick days, which potentially increases healthcare costs. Inactive children may live up to 5 years less than an active child. Kids of inactive parents are half as likely to become active themselves. It's the problem outside of schools. As economies grow, physical activity is systematically designed, innovated and engineered out of our daily lives for the improvements in technology, etc. Physical activity levels vary by household income. In England in 2012, 76% of men in the highest income quintile reached recommended levels, compared to 55% of men in the lowest income quintile. Does the problem lie that the fact that pupils are not having a positive experience in physical education? In school, it is the climate created by the teacher and the experience the student has during PE that can potentially affect a person's lifelong participation in physical activity. The climate that is created by the teacher will potentially affect the student's ability, confidence and enjoyment during PE lessons. which in effect could potentially affect the well-being and potential lifelong participation of that student. A school sports survey showed that pupils that say they enjoy school sport are 195% more likely to be hooked on sport later in life than pupils who don't enjoy it at all. Ability also plays a part, as pupils are 144% more likely to be hooked on sport if they have represented their school at sport. There is an increased chance of a pupil being hooked on sport if their parents or friends are also involved in sport, and pupils are 58% more likely to be hooked on sport if they are very confident in trying new activities without worrying. There is also a 10% increased probability of being hooked on sport if the pupil is always comfortable in PE and school sport. The school sports survey also showed that 30% of girls say they are not good at sport compared to the 18% of boys. From the pupils who are not hooked on sport, 44% of girls say they lack the confidence to try new activities compared to the 27% found in boys. 58% of teachers agree that more time should be devoted to PE at their school. 58% of pupils who felt confident did sport in their leisure time compared to 29% of those who lacked confidence. Sports club members have higher levels of perceived confidence. 83% said they were confident compared to 17% that weren't. 33,000 pupils said that they would do more if they were better at sport. 22,000 of those were girls and 11,000 were boys. On the surface, pupils may seem like they are enjoying PE and performing well, so this will lead the teacher to believe that student is highly motivated, but this might not be the case. The quantity of a person's motivation is what we, as observers, see, but what we don't know is the quality of the motivation, which is the reason behind the motivation, so really we only get a glimpse of the whole picture. There are many reasons to take part in PE that could result in signs of high quantity of motivation. An example of low quality motivation would be that the student only does PE to avoid punishment or get praise. This is more of an extrinsic motivation compared to a high quality motivation, which is the student just loves taking part in PE, which is more of an intrinsic motivation of the student. With high levels of intrinsic motivation, pupils have the best chance to achieve their optimal performance, continue their participation in PE and school sports activities, and as a result of this, they will develop into active and physical, literate adults. In physical education, there is a focus on developing pupils' physical and skill-related ABCs, which is agility, balance and coordination, but it's also important to keep in mind that our pupils have a psychological ABCs that need to be cultivated as well. All pupils are more likely to inhibit quantity and quality of motivation when they have a sense of A standing for autonomy, which is when the student feels they have a voice and a choice during lessons. B stands for belonging, which is when the student feels they are respected and feel connected with the group. And the C stands for competence, which is when the student has a feeling of having the ability to meet the demands of the session. Research tells us that if children are to participate in PE for autonomous reasons, it is important that they feel autonomous throughout their engagement in classes. When children feel autonomous, i.e. they have a sense of ownership over their participation or have a voice and sense of choice, they are more likely to do PE for intrinsic reasons. But sometimes in class, pupils feel that they have a low autonomy, i.e. no voice or choice, and their participation may feel controlled by something or someone else, i.e. the PE teacher, and this may result to them not wanting to do PE because they feel they have to rather than they want to. Children who feel controlled during PE lessons are more often than not to have a bad experience during the lesson. When pupils feel autonomous, they will take part for intrinsic reasons rather than extrinsic reasons, and this will mean they will enjoy PE and sport, because when students feel they have a voice and choice when they participate in PE, it will be for their own sake, and they can focus on the joys and challenges of PE rather than the extrinsic rewards. They can concentrate and stay in the moment. This is because pupils' focus will be more likely in the game rather than getting distracted by having their eye on the prize, i.e. thinking about the credit or recognition to be won or lost before the class is over. They can become more creative and good at problem solving. This is because when they participate in activities for their own sake, there is a greater sense of freedom, less anxiety, and it will mean they will be easier to be creative in some circumstances. They can participate and engage when extrinsic rewards are not present. This is because the pupil is doing PE for its intrinsic rewards, and they don't need to depend on the external factors to motivate themselves. Research tells us that if children are to do PE for intrinsic reasons and experience a high quality and quantity of motivation, it is important that they feel a sense of belonging throughout their engagement in class and after school activities. When children feel a sense of belonging, they feel cared for, safe, valued and respected with their teacher and with their classmates. They are more likely to do PE for intrinsic reasons, such as doing PE because they want to rather than because they have to. In PE, when pupils feel well connected and valued by those around them, such as their classmates and their teacher, they develop a solid sense of self-worth and greater resilience in handling setbacks. When pupils feel a sense of belonging, it will result in them taking part for intrinsic reasons and also feel part of a class or team that works together well and efficiently, and have a sense of self-worth as a person regardless of their performance in physical education. For pupils to be more motivated, they need to feel competent. To have both quantity and quality of motivation, we need to go beyond whether pupils feel that they are capable/confident or not. We also need to look at how they typically judge whether they are competent or less competent. There are two different ways to judge competence. The first being task focus, which focuses on personal improvement, task mastery, and the fact that trying hard is important. This means that competence is self-referenced and success is judged by personal performance, improvements, mastery, and individual effort. The advantages of being task-focused include enjoyment and satisfaction, interest and self-esteem, teamwork and team spirit, and a greater skill development. The second is superiority focus, which focuses on comparing yourself to others and the fact that being the best is important. This means that the person's competence is judged by the comparison to others' ability, and success is only judged on performing better than others and being the best. Some negatives of being highly superiority focused include the fear of failure, anxiety, poor sportsmanship, dropping out of sport or giving up in PE, and a low self-esteem. This means that task-focused pupils feel successful when they give 100%. They play to the best of their potential and see improvements. When focused on being the best and superiority, doing one's best is not enough to feel competent or successful for a young pupil. They need to show superiority, and if this is not possible, the focus is on hiding weaknesses and not showing inferiority, which could potentially lead to less effort in lessons. There are 6 life stages through which the physical literacy journey travels: infancy, childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, adulthood, and older age. So this concept is something we need to apply at the very early stages of a child's life. The end goal of all this is to see a much more physically active UK, where we see all generations being much more physically active.